Friends, colleagues and listeners, quick announcement, a live face-to-face conference at long last. 5th to the 7th of September, it's going to be at the Grand Hyatt in Athens, and I'm talking about the Air Cargo Handling Logistics Conference, which also has Air Freight Pharma in association with Cool Chain, AGS, Airline Ground Services, in association with ASA Leadership Forum, and on top of that, we've got ULD Care. Des Fatanis is going to be the chairman, myself and Stan Rafe, co-moderators. Hard talk, direct questions, great panel, great speakers. Please join us, and all details are shown below in the link. Here we are again, and my goodness me, the 5 episodes that I've had with Matthew Vaughan, who's the Director of Aviation, Security and Cyber, as well as Emergency Management, has absolutely flown by. And now here we are, Matthew, doing the wrap-up, the final episode.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It's been a good experience, and like we said from the outset, I really hope there's some interesting points that people can take away and consider in their own environments.
I'm sure there is. Now, just to recap, so we started off episode 1 with a broad international overview, and we covered safety and security considerations for logistics. We then moved on to a very, very topical subject matter, which is cybersecurity. And currently there's some organizations who've been affected and continue to be affected. So that was all about not if, but when, and the Internet of Safety and Security Things. Then episode 3 was from screen to secured, change or be changed, security as a commercial asset. Then we moved on to 4, another I think a real tasty subject, which is human factors in security and safety, and the human firewall, and how difficult it is to actually manage, understand, and have oversight of what people do or don't do. And then finally, episode 5, which was supporting air cargo logistics and national visions. So that's where we stand. Now, to wrap all that up and to keep going into the various episodes again, I don't think would do us any good, Matthew. So what I've done is, and it's for more simplicity for me than anything else, I thought to myself, now, what would I do to ask Matthew to do something that if I was listening, I'd be thinking, okay, that's really, really going to make a difference to me, or it endorses what I'm already doing. So basically the scenario, Matthew, is you went to bed tonight and woke up in the morning and everything was different, and you weren't working for IATA, but you had all that experience, and suddenly you decided to become a self-employed consultant, and you needed to hit the button that would make people want you more than anybody else. What would it be that, bearing in mind those 5 subject matters we've covered, what would it be that you would be telling people if you were in their positions, what you would do now, right now, with the knowledge you have, to make sure that their companies were as secure as possible and safe?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So, look, I think without sounding trite or like somebody that's wearing the T-shirt on corporate management speak, the sort of easy way to answer that is your overall mission needs to be safe, profitable, facilitated growth, right? And so, how do you achieve that with the perceptions of some of this risk that's coming towards the industry that, as you said, Chris, that's actually within the industry right now. It's being experienced, it's materialized risk. There are elements that are still unknown, but for me, if you want to kind of boil that down to a couple of quick talking points, leaving the management speak to the side, it's about understanding integrated risk.
Yeah.
And that risk is no longer sort of sectioned off or siloed into its own domain. Safety, security operations, cyber risk that we spoke about, they are inherently linked by nature, and second and third order effects, if you're down the rabbit hole on one particular risk vector, can materialize well before you're ready, or even have any precursors or indicators as to where that's heading. So I think as an organization, you really need to have strong grip on your risk management culture.
And can I just jump in there? So and I 100% agree. One of the things that I'd like to point out, and I'm sure it's something you'd endorse, is management tends to dismiss risk and pass it over to the QHSS and E group, or until something goes wrong. They don't actually have their own hands dirty with regards to addressing it. And I think that's one of the things that needs to change. The accountability of all management, this must be one of the tools that they've got at the top of their toolbox.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's about limiting the amount of ghost stories that you have attached to risk assessments, right? So it's a scale of probable to improbable. And it's understanding that as you move from that left to right, if you want to, you want to address the spectrum of probable to improbable, the controls cost money, and they cost time and a level of influence and senior leadership, or in the case of sort of frontline staff, as we spoke about in the human factors session, it requires their buy-in, safe buy-in to ensure that the processes are available and implemented in that sort of high quality level. But for me it's about just you're not going to be able to get leadership to buy in with 20 different risks if you simply don't know how to profile and qualify the first 3.
Yeah.
And they are going to cost X, Y, Z. And kind of have I mean, as I'm talking now, it sounds really simple, but an order of priority in terms of what those controls cost, and as I said, in time and economics attached to it. That's one way to ensure that leadership buys into what we're talking about. And then of course cyber is just one of those. Not only do you have sort of the literacy challenges around cyber as a topic, right, in the way that we use technology today as we are right now, but it's also getting leadership to believe and understand cyber comes in many different forms of risk, and predominantly at the moment that is unavailability of critical services, and as we said in the cybersecurity session, the whole ransomware piece, the whole economic consequence piece that's attached to it. So to come back to your opening question, the sort of second step would be, as we discussed in the human factors, to take your phrase around the 4 Fs, and to ensure that those processes are available and implemented at that level of quality that's desired. You then got basic facility systems and security and sort of the overlay that goes with the actual environment in which the physical environment in which you work within.
Yeah. And
then finally the commodities themselves, the cargo itself, and a big effort on at least the role that I'm currently working on is the getting the upstream partners and players within that logistics supply chain to again continue to buy into this risk management philosophy, so that by the time cargo is at the ramp of an aircraft, for example, or a road network, it can be any form of transport in that sense, that the assurances attached, the security and safety assurances attached with those commodities are accepted without sort of further scrutiny and a higher degree of trust.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's that balance of ignorant risk and sinister risk.
Very true. You just can't hope this stuff goes away.
No.
which could be described as some of the current foreign policies of various governments around the world. But that's a different issue. But you need eyes on, and information collection and sourcing is a big part of that. We obviously live in a volume-based information environment, and so it's not my phrase, and I apologize if I've used it before or anyone's heard me say it before, but it's no longer trying to find the needle. It's just trying to get the right haystack so that you can then start to process and understand the environment to hopefully find that needle. So and again, as has been a current theme in our discussion, cyber is just one of those focus areas that we're all involved in, personally, organizationally, politically. We have to be at least aware of what are the consequences. Don't worry about trying to measure the probabilities. Just focus on managing those consequences.
Yeah, and let me ask you something now. Right, so we've got that, and thanks for that. And now now this is coming. Now I'm asking you to come down to my level, so the opposite end of Darwin's scale for me and you. So what I'm asking you to do now is just be down and dirty, very blunt. Okay. Well, who do you think are the usual suspects now that are preventing or are putting certain barriers in front of how much better we could be at all of these topics that we covered in the 5 episodes? Who do you think are the usual suspects that need to be either taken out of the equation or have their minds washed and put back in, or they just need to be given some more guidelines and exposure to the subject matter?
Yeah, my instinct is telling me, transport ministries, economic, finance type ministries, right? My reflex is telling me all roads lead to adjusting some of those perceptions within the ministries, right? It's not necessarily the minister themselves. It's the bureaucracy that we all know that exists, that sits under it, in how they arrive at that policy sign off. I think at least within the security context, 9/11's short memories, right? We've got short memories. We mentioned the Yemen stuff in October 2010, right? We have to be able to deal with some of this baggage, some of this, sort of, I don't want to call it emotional baggage, but sort of policy baggage in the way that we reacted. And we're not saying measures are bad. We're absolutely not saying that. We're saying that measures cost money. Industry has more than a stake in ensuring that those measures are available. And we need to be given the opportunity and the framework, if you like, to apply those measures where they are greatest needed. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as simple as that, but we got to pull away from this rule-based policy making and really give it back to operators, so that they can control those risk outcomes.
Yeah. Now, when you experience things in life and people have got the saying jobs work, somebody is just so anal that they just
Yeah.
In some cases, they're the ideal people to have on frontline security.
Yeah.
But if you take the general overview, and what I always, whenever I go to a different country or a different airport or a different organization, I always look to see what's the first impressions with regards to their own security of their company, their people, their facilities, etc. And normally, if you score I just do below expected, as expected, and above expected. And if it's above expected, I generally get pleasantly surprised at the things that come thereafter. If it's as expected, it's balanced. And if it's below expected, I normally, whether it's to do with audits, visits, contract discussions, or just general service, customer service levels, it gets exaggerated even more than that first impression. So if that be known, and if that's a sort of a thumb in the air sort of analogy, then Why is it that people don't care? And surely that's where we should be focusing, because now either they don't care because they don't understand or they don't appreciate it, or they don't think it would ever happen to them, or they don't relate what happens in the environment that they're in, how it could have a worse effect further on. And whether that's to do with, security and safety in facilities, or whether it's how you use your laptop, what do you try and put into your systems, what do you do with phone access, all those sort of things. If they genuinely don't know, then surely we've missed the trick, haven't we?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I'm controlling my instinct in my responses here only because I feel like I've been talking about them for 20 years, right? The human involved in this is, the greatest measure and of course the weakest measure at the same time, right? So the conventional thinking says, well, we've got to continue to try to professionalize some of these functions, at least the management or the leadership component attached to the way an organization rolls out their safety and security management systems, right?
Yeah.
The regulatory overlay that we see today, as we just mentioned in a couple of minutes ago, is it actually says to industry, we don't trust you.
Yeah.
We don't. So we're putting the kibosh on to manage the fact that we don't trust you. So what are the strategies required to get back some of that trust? Professionalization is one of them. A really good reporting culture, both punitive and just cause, right? In the sense that if you've got criminal activity and there are allegations, criminal activity associated with either the supply chain or organization, it's got to be called out, right? And it's got to be managed. And the same goes for safety compromises. In the way that if you've got corners being cut and just cheaper ways of doing things in order to get that outcome, and it might work 10 times, and on that 11th time it cumulative risk, it appears in a different way, right? So but these are all activities that of course need to be corporately, commercially, entrepreneurial in nature, right?
But Matthew, how many? Look, let's really consolidate this now, because you're aware of all the training courses that are available through IATA and through all the other, accredited training centres, the ATCs all over. All right, how many training courses, seriously, do you actually get that pinpoint and knuckle down to the difference between responsibility and accountability, validation and verification, awareness and ignorance, and basic alignment with a company's values and mission with making people care?
Yeah, and you're right. The off-the-shelf training options available in the safety, security, and cyber sort of domains, they're generic in nature, that they give you a baseline level of knowledge or understanding or situational awareness as to what that topic is. But Chris, we worked for an organization in the past that we had degrees of customization, right, in how we train, and of course we use both conventional teacher and student differential, that relationship differential, and the fact that I just use the word teacher as opposed to facilitator or enabler, or that just shows you how far gone my sort of modern management view of how we educate the workforce is, right? Because I actually don't think it's a teacher anymore. It has to be intuitive to a degree that you're enabling learning and knowledge and education. You're not actually dictating, right?
Yeah,
that's the point.
I agree with you. And the one thing that I think now makes sense is, and if you look back on COVID, and if you were a sports person and you enjoyed watching your sports, I think with soccer, they had a statistic that more teams won away from home during COVID than they ever did prior to COVID. And it was because of the fact that there was no advantage of having a home crowd or supporters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you take that into the workplace, you know, there are certain people who have to lead. So the way I look at it, they're the ones who are performing on the pitch. You've got the supporters who are the rest of the employees who can say, well, he's no good or she's no good or that's not right or this isn't right. But if you don't get a degree of positive supporting and enabling, you're actually going to bring the team down rather than motivate them to overperform. So this leadership learning, or a new way, linked in with greater regulatory repercussions, there has to be something that makes people really appreciate to the point that they genuinely care, Matthew, because it's a horrible thing, right? When I hate this saying, and I've had a terrible example of it now. I lost my youngest brother back in the end of July, August. He just sudden death, just dropped dead. One of the fittest men I've ever met, lovely, lovely lad, and it's a terrible thing. But the amount of people that said to me, puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Does it boost, you know, does it? It doesn't put it in perspective, but things make people think or make people assume something after the event. And we've got to start helping people care before the event.
Yeah. You know, obviously very sorry to hear that, Chris. No,
it's a terrible thing, but
there's a great to take that a bit further. There's the writer just eludes me for the moment, but he published a book in about 2007 called The Black Swan, and he went on to argue that something along the lines of, you know, the absence of something in the past, or sorry, the other way, the existence of something in the past does not necessarily prove its ongoing existence in the future.
Yeah.
And what he, you know, went on to argue was just it's the human condition, right? It's the psychological condition that we much prefer to react from a position of reaction than forecasting and, you know, trying to put some things in place that either slow down the inevitable or in my case, when I have nothing to do, I'm really successful.
Yeah.
Because the measures are all working.
Exactly.
Right. So, but can I put that forward to anyone?
Yeah.
And say, you know, I'm the quietest security professional or colleague that exists because all my measures are working, all my strategies are, because you never know, you're not hearing of any, you know, compromises or transport related, you know, security events, right? And I'll modestly admit partially some of that is true, and the other half is, you know, my current role is a little different in the sense it's not operational. So I don't have direct control on how some of these measures are rolled out. But you know, to your point around human condition that we face, it's for me, it goes back to the environment that you create. To use an example, I was part of a police service in the late 90s where occupational health and safety regulation was starting to really take hold, right? And the regulation was so punitive that as an individual, you could have been civilly held liable if you didn't wear a high visibility vest, for example, and the organization got a pill. So as a young budding police officer, I could be standing on the side of the road writing out a $200 speeding ticket, but because I wasn't wearing a vest, I get a $1,000 ticket myself, you know, times 5. And so the point I'm trying to make is people learned pretty quick, right? Because it hit them in the pocket.
Yep.
And then the agency got it. So you then got a double hit because they'd recover that through salary. I don't think that that's necessarily the way to get to get to some of these sort of especially within this particular supply chain, and we continue to talk about professionalizing various levels of that workforce, right? So, but that's just one example that was effective. Like I got to tell you, there isn't an Australian police officer that doesn't walk around with big bright yellow collars on them.
And probably a stab vest as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But the thing is, though, Matthew, that made an impact.
Mm.
Now, all the niceness and patting on the shoulder and this makes sense, is that, with the greatest respect, it doesn't do anything. And
it's hard to measure.
Whereas human nature and just, educated mindset would suggest that if you reason with people, they will be reasonable. Well, it doesn't happen.
You're right. We saw a recent example of that in Canada. So, reasonableness out the window. So, different issue, of course, but there's merit to that.
But you know what I mean? Something has to be done to make it effective, because I just think I've had a couple of examples in my career where I've had to be involved in investigating when somebody's been killed, in the workplace.
Mm.
And there is nothing worse than being on the end of a telephone talking to that person's family to tell that family that somebody that they loved has just passed away or died or been killed because of.
Yeah.
And you can't reason with it.
No, you can't. You can't, especially at work.
Yeah.
Right. Who wants to die at work?
And the people that are responsible, they say, I wish I had have, or if somebody had told, well, it's too late then. And I just feel, it's a little bit wishy-washy. And, I was talking to somebody else about, being seen to be green and how these companies are greenwashing everything they do to make them look better. That's also not effective,
Well, if we get a chance to go face to face in Istanbul later this year, is that?
Was that the World Cargo Symposium? Is it?
Yeah. Was that the? Apologies, I thought you were talking about an event.
Oh, that's in Athens.
Athens. Sorry, Athens. Yes.
Athens in September. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah.
We can.
I look forward to seeing you there.
Do an on-stage debate.
Yes, my friend. Yeah. yeah. It'll be good.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But listen, just to end. So is there any a bit of advice or anything that you would give, because I'm sure people would say, right, there's been a lot of issues we've spoken about, but, what would be the prerequisite 1, 2, 3 that you should do if you're in a position of supervisory level and above in any cargo organization?
I think you need to have your risk guy or your risk champion or whoever it is that is helping you set up enterprise or organizational type risk methodology. I'd give them a call and find out where you're at.
Yeah.
Understand not the results, but the actual structure and the framework of what you're doing as an organization. Secondly, I'd find where is the cyber ranking in that collection of risks. And then third, aim to validate some of that, right? And the controls and the costs that are associated with it, the regulatory piece, just achieving compliance is not risk management. Risk management is the next piece that comes out after it. So, to use an Australian expressionism, deal with the crocodiles closest to the boat first. And, in our 5 sessions, that's what we've been trying to hopefully try to impart. And if our little collaboration here could save a company $1, then I'll feel pretty good about it.
Yeah. And I love that saying. And there was another one that I heard about it as well, is if you think you're out of the woods because the crocodile's head is turning, you be aware, because that tail comes around even quicker. And when you're on the ground, you'll soon be in the head again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's dark, but it's relevant.
All right, listen, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the role that you've got. It's by no means a simple one, but I'm sure you get a lot of satisfaction out of it and a lot of challenges. And
Certainly do.
If not before, we look forward to seeing you in September in Athens.
Yeah, wonderful, Chris. Absolutely look forward to it. And yeah, all the best with your work and promotion, and keeping the topics motivated.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Matthew. All the best, my friend.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.